Welcome to the Big Sis Little Sis podcast. I'm Elle.
And I'm Ruby.
And we're two ethnic sisters here to talk about all things culture, feminism, and business.
Join us for weekly unfiltered and unapologetically female opinions and join in on the conversation.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hello again.
Another rainy day here in Queensland.
Queensland rainy day.
I don't know what is happening. I think it's the podcast days, Ruby, because yesterday it was stunning.
Do you think we're bringing on the bad weather?
And then today I'm like, what is going on?
I'm just really glad I'm working from home today.
Well, I've got to drive back to the Gold Coast, so that's going to be fun in this rain.
Too bad for you. Well, Elle.
Well, Ruby.
Well, Elle. Okay. The Prison of Public Reputation, Part 2. That's what we're talking about today. So we're going to be building on last week's episode with a bit of a twist, talking about something slightly different in terms of the honour code system and reputation. But let's just recap last week's episode. So last week we spoke about the honour code and how it integrates into, various communities and how it contrasts with the dignity code, basically. What we covered was that, women are the basis of this code. They're the ones who uphold the code and reputation for their families and their marriages. But also, it seems to be really based on women's sexuality overall. What we want to discuss today is how this extends into the code of married women and divorced women and people who are going through, this sort of thing with kids, etc. There's something that I came across and I read the title.
Yes.
And if you take out two words from the title and replace it with Turkish Australian, I swear to God, it's the exact same thing. It applies.
Well, please enlighten us.
So there is an article by somebody called Salam Abul Hassan. It's a 2018 article and it's titled Carrying the Burden of a Culture, Bargaining with Patriarchy and the Gendered Reputation of Arab American Women. But I swear to you, it applies.
Relatable.
I read it and I was like, this is us. This is literally us.
I think it's, ethnic women.
It's ethnic women.
Ethnic women.
I just want to start by reading you an excerpt from that study. And this is really it just slapped me in the face. And I was like,
yep.
Yes. So it says, women in this study insisted that reputation did not affect how they viewed other women, but refused to engage in deviant behavior openly. Instead, they kept their behavior under wraps, even as progressive thinkers, because they lived within an ethnic community and had to shelter themselves from the consequences of reputation that could alter their lives, regardless of their views. And this just resonated with me, because what that says to me is, even if you're a progressive thinker, even if you're a pretty strong feminist, the probability of you expressing those views openly when you're quite high on the honour scale is low because you're going to get blowback and judgment.
And your family, Ruby.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to hurt them and have them have a bad reputation ultimately. I mean, you could be at a point where you don't really care for yourself, but then, if you care for your family and if they care about the honour code and the honour code is so high up on the scale, you don't want to upset them or hurt them and have them affected or their reputation affected within the community. So you do still keep things on the low.
Yeah, because ultimately it's going to affect them, and it's not that it's necessarily going to affect you, but, you love your family and you love your community. So you don't necessarily want to do anything to compromise that, even if it doesn't affect you personally.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think about all the times when, I didn't post a photo of myself maybe wearing something or doing something not because I'm not proud of what I'm doing. I'm completely comfortable.
Yes.
But I just think about, what if this person sees it and then this person shows it to this person and then, my mum gets upset.
I know. And ultimately you don't want to upset your mum.
No, exactly.
Oh,
so
my poor mummy.
Yeah, so everything in this study, Al, I highly recommend all of you out there. I'm going to leave a link to it as well in our Instagram, but please read it because it's so relevant to what we experience in ethnic communities across Australia and I think across the world.
Yes. So let's talk about the honour code when you are married, Ruby, because people are so worried about their reputation. They're not confident in expressing the issues that they have within the marriage. So I think people get to a point where things aren't even fixable because they keep everything on such, they keep it to themselves and they don't get help. And when things have reached a point of extreme toxicity, they don't know how to escape or get out of this marriage.
It's really hard, Elle, because, you think about somebody who's going through some problems in their marriage, and who would you typically want to tell first of all? You might tell maybe your sisters, maybe your mum if you're open with them, and maybe some friends. It just depends on who's around you. But when you're in such a, strict community, and I'm talking about 8s and 9s and 10s here, because this doesn't really apply to the 1s and 2s.
No.
It's not something that you want to openly discuss because A, everybody knows your business now.
Yeah.
And B, are your friends able to help you at all even? They don't really want to get involved.
Nobody wants to get involved. So nobody wants to be the so-called, home wrecker or, giving you advice that would possibly end in divorce.
But also, because, if people go through this and they find that they can't talk about their problems, like, it's extremely detrimental to your mental health. Like, you're just bottling it in, and it's just, you explode at the end. I mean, who can you tell?
Divorce is just...
It's a stigma.
It's a stigma, Ruby.
Yeah.
And, once you are divorced, you are not treated as you were when you were married. And that could be being invited to social gatherings, or people perceive you differently, like a failure almost.
Yeah, but it's you're just like a black sheep all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking about people who I've seen, and this is just my personal experience of what I've seen around divorced women. It's, if you're married now and you have a friend who's divorced, like, don't invite her around to your house.
Oh, wow. I have definitely seen that in the community. So I knew this girl in my early 20s, and just having a conversation with her one day, and she was going to be like a witness at her friend's wedding, but her friend's family had an issue with this because she was divorced.
Oh, really?
Because she was divorced.
So what, she's not qualified
She's not qualified to be a witness at her friend's wedding.
That's low.
Now, this is what I'm talking about. When you were divorced, you were labelled, a divorcee, and you're excluded because of this, because you're a failure, and, you will bring bad luck, and, there's something wrong with you. How could you not survive that marriage? How could you not? You are not strong enough. No. You should have stuck it through. I mean, especially if you have children. How dare you be that selfish? Doesn't matter what that man was doing. How dare you divorce your husband? And that is exactly what is still happening. And again, it blows my mind, the fact that it is still happening. I mean, I've been away from the community for so long, and that's why I think...
That's your memory of it, though.
It's my memory of it.
Yeah.
But no... Because I don't live in it and I don't see it and I'm not exposed to people like that any longer, but just discussing these issues with other people and just talking about it even here, I just think how are people still living this? And that's the fact that, I feel like those comments are just so nasty, Ruby.
Yeah.
How could you not have somebody as your witness purely based on the fact that they were in a marriage they were clearly unhappy in? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And there's this, this whole concept of, must preserve your marriage and, don't do anything that can compromise your marriage.
No.
Look, I experienced this firsthand and, sorry, Mum, I'm going to talk about it. But, I when I was living back in Melbourne, I used to go away for work once every 5 weeks, and I would go away for the whole week. So I would go, stay in a hotel, work, do my thing, come back home, no problem. And that was fine. Because, it's work related. Of course you can do that. It's for work. But there was this one time where I wanted to go on a girls' weekend. It was my best friend's 30th birthday. And my mum, meanwhile, I've been married for over 2 years at this point. My mum turned around and she said, oh, no, you can't do that because, don't go away with your friends. It can lead to bad things. And think about your marriage. Like, don't be leaving your husband behind like that. And I was like, okay. I just totally ignored what she said, by the way. So I had a great time.
Of course you did.
But I just thought, and I said, but what do you mean? Like, it's two nights, but I go away every 5 weeks for a whole week. I just couldn't understand why that was a big deal.
Yeah.
But also, why would my husband have a problem with me going away for 2 nights with my friends? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen?
I have heard, Ruby, of women, and this is why she probably said this to you, to be honest, of women who start going on their little girl trip getaways, but I'm talking about women who definitely not independent, no real self-confidence, toxic marriages, and have been going on these girls trips and getting up to other things with other men. So I think because she's seen that within the community, she probably automatically just wanted, it was probably
She wanted to shield me from it.
Shield you from, and protect you from any sort of danger that could arise. So I get that, because they do, and it does happen because they're so...
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Why are they still in their toxic marriages? Because of the fucking honor code system. Because they can't leave their fucking marriages
out. Of course not,
out.
Ruby. Who wants to be... There's a word for it. It's called dual. Yeah. Who wants to be known as dual?
So I'm sorry, but if this lovely lady has to go out and, find, entertainment somewhere else because she's too scared to leave her marriage because of this judgment that occurs, then good for you. Go and do it. Like, power to you. What can I say? I mean, don't be
Mum's going to be watching this going, Ruby, what are you saying, girl?
Yeah, but you should have the freedom to leave your marriage if you're unhappy.
And know that this marriage is bad for them. They've already accepted this. They've come to this point, yet the reasons of not being able to leave their husbands is purely because of public reputation, and that's what is really sad.
I want to read you another excerpt from that study.
You and your excerpt.
Sorry, another excerpt because it was just so good. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. Women were critical of the ways in which reputation governed their lives, especially as they left their marriages. But they bargained with patriarchy to preserve their reputation and to avoid the stigma of divorce. They remained focused on marriage and remarriage, and understanding that they faced a strike to their image for choosing divorce, and opting to move back home and monitor their behaviours to alleviate some of the negative social impact. What does this say to you?
Strike, and then it's like, go back to your dad's home, because now you are divorced.
You are divorced? 2 options. Find a new man to look after you, or go back to the original man who looked after you.
Because, we all need a man, apparently.
Yeah, and look, I think this is something that we need to talk about, Al, because, as I said, it's going to apply to the high 8s, 9s and 10s. Perhaps not the 1s and 2s like yourself, remaining in Gold Coast and living your best life. But a lot of people who get divorced, Al, they immediately feel pressure. And sometimes this isn't just unspoken. Sometimes they'll say it to your face. You have to move back home.
Yep.
Or we're going to set you up with someone new.
And, this urgency to find somebody new quick.
Because
Before
you continue to tarnish your reputation, because we know how divorcees are treated. They're frowned upon. Yep. They're, ostracized. They're excluded. So your family knows this.
And another topic, Ruby, interesting. Because you're no longer pure, right? You've already been married, so you're not a virgin. There's a fear. A fear that, you don't have to preserve it any longer.
I'm sorry. I just thought about... She's had a taste of sex, boys. That's it. We've got to rein her in.
There's a fear, Ruby. A real fear within, that these parents of the divorcees have, that now she's just out there having sex with everybody, and she's going to be doing this in, horrible, horrible reputation and shame for the family. So I think that's one of the reasons why they try so hard to find you a partner immediately. I mean, look, I'm not experiencing anything like that, guys. Definitely. But there are people that do experience
this. This is unspoken. As
exactly.
I said, this part nobody tells you about. Nobody says, please don't have sex while we find you a husband. But it's implied in this urgency.
Yeah.
We spoke about, obviously a little bit on, the role of friends in this, divorcing situation and the lack of support that they're able to provide out of fear.
Yeah.
Again, excerpt. There's another excerpt.
Oh, again, here we go.
I can't stop reading it to you because it's just so damn relevant. All right, I'm going to read this out to you. Women indicated that support to help mediate the impact of divorce was relatively non-existent due to fear of one's own reputation if they were seen as encouragers of divorce. They were told to stay out of it and that they were homewreckers and that they were breaking up families, even in cases of violence. Women condemned violent relationships, but they understood reputation prevented individuals from seeking help. There's a quote here: "My parents tell me not to get involved. I can't be responsible for the breakup of two people. You don't involve yourself. What if she wants to stay?" Women agreed that victims of marital violence should be helped, but they were clear that individuals were dissuaded from helping. So, this goes back to the whole, you could be a progressive thinker, but you might not act on it or demonstrate it just in fear of judgment. And again, this is another thing. Obviously, we're all going to... I don't think there's anyone who's going to turn around and say domestic violence is cool. Like, obviously, no one deserves to be, abused in their marriage or relationship. But there's a whole nother issue when it comes to getting involved and helping your friend or your family member out of that situation. So what it does is it forces our women to become disengaged from each other, and then you end up withdrawing out of fear of blowback.
That's true. And, like you said, nobody wants to be responsible because things could get better. That's what they all say, right? Oh, it could get better. And, what if it changes? What if he changes?
What if they turn around and they blame you?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to be the one to be blamed. Even though I see all the red flags and I see clearly you're in a toxic marriage, but I'm not going to say anything.
And look, I'm just going to say it. I think that when people don't want to get involved, and I'm talking about a close friend or a family member here, and you don't want to get involved just because you want to save your own reputation, that's disgusting. And you need to be more feminist because it's not right. And, this is our closest family and peers. We need to help support them because who else is going to do it? Some stranger's not going to help them.
Yep. So if you have a close family member or a really good, girlfriend who is reaching out to you, don't just sit there and not comment. Help them see the red flags. Take them to a counsellor who can help them see the red flags if, you're still not feeling that confident in yourself.
And I guess if you're worried about blowback and, getting blamed in the end, then, don't worry about it, because if that person's going to come back and blame you for their marriage ending, then they're a shit person anyway. I'm sorry. So help your friend in their time of struggle if you can, or refer them to someone who can help them. But don't just sit there and watch it happen and watch it, fall apart into pieces.
So, Ruby, one of our listeners has reached out to us and wanted us to share her story, and it was just so touching and it absolutely broke my heart. That women are going through this and have absolutely no support. She not only has been emotionally abused for the past 10 years, but also physically abused as well. And when she reaches out to her family, they keep telling her to think about her children and stay in the marriage. So we just want to let her know that you do not need to do that. You do not need the support of anybody. You are a strong woman, and there are people out there who will help you. And if anybody out there is going through a similar situation, please reach out to us. Now, we've given her all the right details, all the right people to contact. And it just breaks my heart, Ruby, that, these women feel so stuck. And they're reaching out to us, for help.
I'm really inspired, by the fact that she had so much strength to reach out to us.
Yep.
And ask for help that unfortunately she wasn't able to receive from her closest family and friends.
No.
It breaks my heart. But again, if you are out there or you know somebody who needs help and perhaps you can't provide it, please send them in our direction and we will point them in the right direction.
So we are about to speak to Gulseli, who is a counsellor within the community, the Turkish community in Melbourne. And I'm really excited just to find out, her perspective, because she deals with these sorts of women who are in these bad situations firsthand. So, I mean, we could sit here and talk all day, but no, she actually experiences it. So we're just about to give her a call, which we're super excited about.
Here we go. Good morning, Gulseli. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Ruby and Al.
Good morning.
So
Thank you for having me on.
thank you for joining. So look, we would love to, learn a little bit more about you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for our listeners?
So I'm a clinical counsellor, registered clinical counsellor. I opened up my own private practice just over a year ago in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. And I've been working with women and couples
Sure.
that
And
are from ethnic backgrounds.
So you're basically in the heart of it all.
Yes,
And
they
you
are.
get to see what really goes on in these communities and what, people, especially women, go through, within their marriages.
Yeah, definitely I do. I get a first-hand view into everything.
Yeah.
It's not always what people show their marriage to be like.
Yeah.
A lot of the time we have this image that we display to everyone else. Even our family and friends, we display this happy married image to them.
Yeah.
so, Gulseli, can we ask you, is there anything that surprises you in terms of, some of the issues that you see within people's marriages, perhaps that is influenced by the honour code system and reputation itself?
Yes, well, it doesn't surprise me, but I have come across women that can't leave a toxic relationship due to not being able to leave the financial side of it.
Yeah. So,
If
not
that
being,
makes sense. So
yeah,
they're
not being
able
independent.
not that they're going to be starving or anything. It's just that they don't want to sacrifice their luxuries. And for that reason, they stay in a very toxic marriage. And I think that is due to the community. They've built this reputation in the community, the car that they drive, the bags that they have, the clothes that they wear.
Yeah.
And they don't want to sacrifice that. So I think that's the only thing that would have just got me a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I would have thought that perhaps women were more scared to leave toxic relationships because of, the lack of independence, perhaps because they gave up education or their work career a long time ago to have children.
Yeah, to have their family and, be the homemaker.
Definitely, that is a huge factor too, because they don't know how to be independent. They were so sheltered, and a lot of the women, from this area, the northern suburbs of Melbourne, including myself, I got married at a very young age too. I was sheltered by my parents, and then I went under the shelter of my husband,
Yeah.
and that's all I knew till, I went back to uni and studied. But not everyone is like me. There are people that haven't went off and paid a bill in their life. They don't know how to pay bills.
Yeah.
Everything like that gets done for them through their husband. And also just that judgment of the community, the divorcee. You don't want to be the divorcee because you hear your mum talk about it. You hear the aunties in the community talk about it, how they talk about divorcees. And this is it's a bad cycle. It's a generational toxic trauma that we need to let go of, that we need to break, because otherwise we're just handing this down to our daughters and our sons to have this image of a divorcee.
Yeah. And can you just give us a bit of an idea of what this image is for listeners out there that can't relate to what we're saying at the moment? I mean, what is this image of a divorcee?
So basically what it is she wasn't strong enough to stay in her marriage or to make her marriage work.
So she's a
so
failure. Yep, she didn't stick
she's
around.
a failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not so much that he did anything wrong, or let's question what he may have done, or let's question how much did he try to make this marriage work. It's more the pressure's on the woman.
And especially if she has children, then it's
Yes.
like, you have to sacrifice your life for your children,
She-
basically, no matter how toxic that relationship is.
Definitely. She is being considered selfish. A lot of the time I see that.
Yeah.
And that burden sits with them. And it's really hard to carry it out because just being labelled as selfish because you wanted to exit a very toxic relationship that was probably traumatizing your children also. If anything, it was actually good for your children to leave that toxic relationship. But we have such a stigma around it in our community, unfortunately.
I mean,
and it's going to become very difficult to change that.
And I mean, I have seen with a few people where even when there was cheating involved, the women were expected to forgive for their children and let go for their children and continue being married to this person for their children. Have you come across those scenarios?
Definitely, I have. And this is what I mean when I said, their mental and emotional health has been sacrificed.
Yeah.
And it's sad. Nobody should have to sacrifice their mental and emotional health for any situation. If he's cheated and you can't tolerate that, look, there are situations people do make mistakes. And if they can turn from that mistake and realize what they've done, they always deserve a second chance. But when you're given this opportunity time after time, and the community is putting the pressure on the woman to give the man this chance every single time, it doesn't become a mistake. It becomes a habit.
Have you ever seen the opposite scenario of where a woman has cheated within the community and a man was expected to forgive and forget and move on and continue the marriage?
No, I mean,
No.
I have seen it.
I'm not surprised there, actually.
No. No, I haven't. But what I have come across is women speaking to other men while they're married. And I find that to be a sabotage of the marriage, and
Yeah.
probably something that's done subconsciously, not that it's done intentionally. But they don't know any other way out of this toxic marriage, so they're sabotaging it by speaking to other men, hoping to get caught.
Oh, wow.
So they're willing to sacrifice their reputation just to be free of this toxic relationship.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. They're waiting to be caught, to be released, because they don't have the strength to leave this toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
If that makes sense.
it ties in with our theme around, this whole honor code system and how it relates to married women. Often these women don't receive support from their friends and family because you are expected to stay in and just, keep taking it for the sake of your family and your children, whereas some women just can't take it anymore and they don't have to. No person has to, as you said, sacrifice their mental health in order to, continue something which is clearly, falling apart.
And I think women are labelled as wives and mothers before a person. Once you're married and you have children, that's it. That's your title. You are no longer your own person, and your sole duty is to make sure that your family, your children are taken care of. And, you don't, even if you are in an unhappy situation, that's not your priority because you are not your priority any longer.
No, you lose your identity in some cases. That's what they expect from you in the community. And the sad thing is, if you are a divorcee in this community, and I'm just talking on the majority that I've come across, if you are a divorcee, then you're excluded even with family events. And then you're expected to either move in with your family or get married to someone else ASAP.
Yes. That's interesting because it's definitely in line with some of the research that we found, looking at Arab women in the US. So it's completely different culture, different country. However, it's the same vein in what we're talking about with this honor code system, that in order to save or salvage that reputation, your two options are to move back in with your primary caretakers being your father, or find a new man who is going to be your primary caretaker. So it's just this notion of, constantly needing a man in order to be a complete woman.
Definitely. It's sad because you are either a wife or a daughter. Other than that, you don't have an identity and you won't be respected, basically.
Yeah.
You either need to be, a daughter living under your father's roof.
Yeah.
With your children if you're divorced. Otherwise, you need to go find another husband that's going to shelter you, and you're going to be labelled the wife.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to be accepted back into society, into community.
It's really sad.
It is.
And there's so many issues there, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast with Ruby, just to kind of outline and actually speak about these issues.
They are unspoken rules. Nobody tells you that you're not a part of this community anymore. You know, there isn't a committee for the community that says, oh, you're not welcome back here. But it is very unspoken, and there are a lot of whispers. And so, you know, there is consistent pressure to all of our young women, you know, to maintain and uphold that reputation.
Yeah.
So, Gulseli, can I ask you, given all this conversation that we've had, is there any advice that you can give to, you know, the women out there who may be going through something similar?
Yes, I would definitely say work on yourself. Work on rebuilding yourself if you've just come out of a marriage like this, or if you're stuck in a marriage like this. Work on yourself. Question your intentions. Question your husband's intentions if you're stuck in a toxic marriage and whatever he may be doing. If it's cheating, you know, there's not much to question there. But is it done out of, what is he doing it for? Is he doing it because he thinks he's just a man and he can do that? Or is he doing it because he feels lost or there's no connection within them? And that's another thing in our community. A lot of people don't have that connection. They don't know how to rekindle that connection year after year. It becomes difficult.
Yeah.
So it's about communication. Communicate with that person. Don't feel that you need to live a life based on what other people think that you need to live. This is your life. It is our life.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when the doors close, you're stuck with your burden. Nobody else cares about that. It is totally our burden that we're stuck with. So don't burden yourself according to other people's judgments.
Exactly right.
And continue working on yourself. Continue on working on your self-worth. Continue on working on your self-boundaries with people, so you can have really good relationships in the future. Boundaries is very important. In fact, it's a really important part of self-care, and this has gone unrecognised for so long.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the times boundaries tell even your partner, you need to set the boundaries. You tell your partner what you tolerate and what you don't. If they cross your boundary, you stand your ground. Don't move back because you're a woman.
Yeah.
That is your boundary. And I find that a lot. They set the boundary, but then he does something and they take another step back.
Yeah.
And stand your ground and stand there. And that's how you're going to gain self-respect and self-worth. Because each time you take a step back, you lose that.
Absolutely. Very good points.
So, yeah, that's the recommendation that I could give. Seek help. You're not alone. Don't isolate yourself. Don't allow people to isolate you, especially for women that have been divorced recently or getting divorced. Don't allow family and friends to make you feel excluded. You continue living your life. And this is the thing. Continue enjoying your own company, being at peace with yourself. So anyone that comes into your life only adds on to that, doesn't take away from you.
Exactly. I think being happy within yourself is the key. Definitely. And
contentment is the key.
And not relying on somebody else to make you happy.
Yeah, and just to the judgment of, look, we all carry a self-image and we all try to protect that self-image to a certain degree. Now, you need to decide how much of your self-image is determined by community.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that sort of, fits nicely into what we discussed about where people rate on the honour scale. Because for people like us who rate quite lowly, we don't necessarily give a second thought to what the community thinks of us. It's quite easy for us to move on and, live the life that we want to live. But for somebody who's been a part of that honour scale, really quite high up there in the 8, 9s and 10s, it's going to be much more difficult for them to start letting go of these judgments.
Exactly. And, thinking about what people think about them.
Especially talking from the community here in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, they can quite make your life hell, make you very miserable. It's sad.
Yeah.
If you were to do something out of their, what you call would be the honour code. If you were to step out of those lines, the way that the gossip and the backbiting and everything else that comes along with it can make someone feel very miserable. And that should be the case. And now, with the newer generation, we're trying to break this cycle and trying to change this mentality.
Well, that all sounds really incredible, and thank you so much for providing some insight. I just want to let our listeners know that Gulseli is available for private sessions as well if you do want to reach out for some help. Alternatively, if you are experiencing any domestic violence assault, there is a National Sexual Assault, Family and Domestic Violence Counselling line, and you can dial 1-800-RESPECT for a confidential conversation. Thank you so much for your time today, Gulseli.
And it was lovely speaking to you.
Thank you for having me on.
And we will
chat to you soon. It was an honour to be on your podcast. I look forward to more chats like this in the future.
Absolutely, so do we. Thank you so much, and you have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
As always, you can reach out to us on our Instagram, BigSisLittleSis_podcast. But until then, catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.